Hey, tourpreneurs, it's Mitch Bach, and just a quick note before we begin today's episode. Tourpreneur is currently sponsored by Google. We're thankful for their support of our community, and we are offering with them a completely free course helping you unlock the power and potential of Google's Things to Do program, which is specifically helping tour operators add their tours to Google in new ways that gives you new exposure and more direct bookings. To learn more, go to tourpreneur.com/Google. And as always, show notes, more resources, links to our newsletter, our business coaching community, and so much more are available on tourpreneur.com. Now to the episode.
It's nice to also just talk about it out loud to another industry professional, you know? Sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy at home by myself trying to work on this.
Welcome to the Tour Operator Startup Series on the Tourpreneur Podcast. Travel industry veteran Nikki Padilla Rivera follows a tour operator startup on their journey from idea to execution to we don't know where. We hope it's to success, but you're going to have to listen in each month to find out. And now, welcome your host, Nikki Padilla Rivera.
Hello, tourpreneurs. We're back. I'm back with a new season of the Tour Operator Startup, which is very exciting. If you're new to this series on Tourpreneur, we basically follow tour operators who are just starting out, whether they've already launched or they're in the beginning stages. We talk about their wins, their challenges, all in real time. And this season, we're going to switch it up a little bit so that you're going to actually hear from multiple tour operators that we'll check in with in turn over time. So for this first episode, I'm going to introduce you to Simon from Chango Tours, which are sidecar motorcycle tours in Paris. That's right. We've gone real niche for this one, and it's amazing. In this first episode, you're going to get to know Simon, find out how on earth he decided to start a motorcycle tour business during a global pandemic, learn all about the hoops he had to jump through, all of the logistics and licenses that you need when you're starting up with not just any tour vehicle, but one that is so niche it's actually coming back into style, apparently. Who knew sidecars were a thing? But I get the impression that Simon likes a challenge, and he's just done so much planning that I'm really, really excited to continue to follow him as his season opens up. So in this episode, you're just going to get a taste of what he's about. And in the months ahead, we'll keep checking in with him to see how things are going. Any show notes, including links to Chango Tours, or if you're looking for earlier episodes of this series, you can just head to tourpreneur.com. And enjoy. It's exciting to be back. Simon, so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Nikki, it's my pleasure. Thanks for reaching out.
So I have to say, this season, we wanted to talk to a few more people who are starting something interesting. And I'd, reach out to colleagues and people. And I reached out to a colleague of mine, former colleague, Claudia, and said, I'm looking for someone doing something really cool in Europe. And she gave me your website, and I click on your website and it opens up and there is you. I want to say in a leather jacket, riding a motorcycle with a sidecar. And that was very exciting. So I would love for you to just kind of, with that image in mind for everyone listening, if you could kind of just introduce yourself, very brief history, how you ended up maybe even in travel, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. Well, hello, listeners. My name is Simon Burke, and I'm a French-American dual citizen. I've spent my life flip-flopping between Paris and the New York tri-state area, and I followed my heart back to Paris. Well, followed a girl. She's not my wife, so that was a good call. And I was originally certified to teach history. So I was looking for jobs in the international school system in Paris. I'm not certified to teach in the French system, but international schools would take me. And there weren't any vacancies, but I did see a vacancy for a tour guide position with Fat Tire Tours. And so I, just applied for it. And the guys looked at my resume. They said, "Oh, French, English, bilingual history teacher. Sure, you got the job. And within 5 days, I decided that I had made a giant mistake studying education, and I should have studied tourism. And so I've been in tourism ever since. That was 2008, and I haven't looked back. I absolutely love the industry. Being a tour guide was one of the coolest jobs I ever had, and then I spent a lot of time hiring and training tour guides, and I was almost as cool, if not cooler.
I mean, I love when tourpreneurs start out as tour guides. And I think a lot of that is inevitable, just sort of you're the only persons who have to do the tour guiding. But I especially love when there was sort of this career in tour guiding first, because I think that's an ingredient that's missing for a lot of people. Being a tour guide is so hard. And if you haven't experienced that at length, I think it's really hard to later on, like, communicate with your tour guides or to be able to actually pass your tours on to tour guides.
Yeah. I mean, are there really people that start tour companies who've never been tour guides?
Yeah.
That would seem counterintuitive to me. I feel like the whole point of starting a tour company is that you already, the prerequisite should be that you already have a love for tour guiding, beating that pavement or, bushwhacking through the forest, wherever your tours may be. But there needs to be, you have to have that in your guts of sorts. I don't know if that translates properly.
I'm just curious. Now it's like tour guide to tour guide, but I'm just curious, what tours did you start out giving?
I actually started out. It was lucky. Fat Tire had their Segway tour guide dropout. This is way back when it was the tail end of the 2008 season. They needed one bicycle tour guide and one Segway tour guide. Their Segway tour guide dropped out. So I started on Segway.
Okay, so the wheels was already a theme right from the beginning of your career. There's a pattern.
Yeah. And then, as time went on, picked up the night bike tour, which was tons of fun. But I really liked the thematic tours. World War II and French Revolution were my two favorite walking tours. And then I would kind of pick and choose from those and use them to spice up the general bike and Segway tours.
I love that. Yeah. Well, I mean, the history teacher really did come in handy, right? So,
very much so.
All around. Okay, I'm going to save this for another episode, but I just also feel like it's really interesting that you're dual citizen, because I talk a lot about sort of the value of the local guide and the value of the expat guide and how they both bring something very special. And I've never thought about the people who do both. Like, that's like the ultimate. No, you have both perspectives.
Well, I think the biggest, I guess, advantage is that we know what it's like to be an outsider, no matter where we are. There's, I speak French fluently, but there's still, like, I'm not as funny in French, but and I speak English fluently, but sometimes I get brain farts and I flub my words, like when I said earlier, it's in your guts. That's a very French expression. So and so I don't even know if that translates very well, but you feel like you always have one foot out of, out of the comfort zone, which then makes it helpful for guests who are visiting a city for the first time. It's very easy to empathize with them being foreign to that city, but then also as a local, you can still figure out all the kind of cool little things that only a local would know about, from living there.
No, it's fantastic.
Understanding the culture a little bit. That's the one thing that I think an expat guide may not ever be able to get to, is really understanding those subtle cultural nuances between that host culture and wherever your guests are from.
Mm-hmm. From the inside, right? Like, it's that inside nuance perspective that really is, you can't teach it. You can explain it to someone, but you can't really understand it.
Yeah, you have to kind of grow up with it. I mean, even though I grew up in the States, my mother's French, my father's half French. So it was, we spoke French at home, and there was English at school. So there are certain things and expressions and manners of being that you just have to grow up with, I guess.
Yeah, I love that topic. But for the purpose of this podcast, I'm very curious, fast forward through your career, and now we're experiencing a global pandemic, and you think, you know what, I'm going to start my own tour business. Why don't you walk me through that decision?
Yeah, I know. A lot of people thought I had lost my marbles. But well, so I had I stayed with my previous employer until June 2021. So I had already experienced 2020, saw the degree to which the industry had suffered, but 2021 already saw a little bit of a comeback.
Especially in France, right?
Yes. I mean, we were really missing many Americans for a large part of the season, but Europeans were coming to Paris in droves. I had never given so many tours to Swiss and Belgian guests, which was kind of cool. You know, I like their accents. And I had never given so many tours in French either, because of those customers coming from the rest of France itself up to Paris and from, you know, the Benelux and Switzerland. And on top of that, I had also lived through the 2016 tourism crisis, where the industry had tanked in Paris specifically by about 60% following the November 2015 terrorist attacks. The Eiffel Tower had shut down for the 2 busiest months of the year because of the Euro Cup. I mean, it was the wettest spring since like 1909. It was just, it was like the season of plagues. It was terrible. There was nothing but bad things happening. So I knew very well that tourism would come back. And after 2020, 2021, I figured, okay, well, the timing is perfect because we're already seeing, you know, if you connect the dots, tourism is coming back slowly but surely. So 2022 would be, actually, when considered, it'd be a great first season, because that's when everybody's got the itch. Travel restrictions would hopefully, I mean, this is all, you know, a lot of hope, but there's also a lot of optimism. 2022 looked like it'd be a pretty solid season to hit the ground running. So leaving my previous employer in July, I had all of August through now to make sure everything was set up. And there were, considering my activity, there's a very high barrier to entry. There are many hoops to jump through in terms of local compliance, you know, getting everything regulated for road use, myself becoming certified with an extra certification to be able to do this. The transport of people with motorized vehicles in France is highly regulated. So there were quite a few things I needed to take care of. That's even, you know, before we even consider the tourism stuff that I need, like a website and a reservation system. So I had several months to put things together, and I'm pretty much just in promo mode now, and I'm just itching to have customers now.
Wow. So you sort of accurately anticipated how long it would take you to do all of the legal stuff?
Yeah, I had researched it months before I lost my job. Okay. The painting was on the wall. So
okay.
I did.
Because I mean, that seems like pretty good luck, right? I would think, and this is coming from someone who's not from Europe. You know, my impression of European systems in general, those hoops that you mentioned jumping through, that processes take a really long time. So I would imagine there would be a fear that something would get held up or that it would take you too long, especially if you have this sort of goal of opening with the season in 2022.
Yeah, for sure. And there have been hiccups already due to Brexit. The manufacture of the sidecar is a little bit delayed. It's only being shipped to me this weekend, and then it has to go through the hoops of getting getting homologué, is like registered for legal road use. So there's a 1 month delay that I already have to deal with. But the partnership, I don't like to say, you know, anything is impossible or, oh my God, it's an end of the world problem. There's always a solution, which is distinctly American. It's very un-French. Most people that I've been dealing with here are surprised, and I don't get too flustered. And it's okay. On va trouver la solution. There's always a way. So they, and this dealership that I'm working with, they're the ones supplying the rig for me. They have a similar mentality. I very much lucked out in terms of finding these guys. They're absolutely fantastic, very nice to work with. And they have a demo rig that I've been using for promotional purposes. And when they called me and told me about the delay, they, you know, within the conversation, 10 minutes later, we decided, okay, well, I can use their demo rig for my customers while I'm still, if I get bookings before I get my own rig.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's best case
Yeah.
scenario.
Score. It limits my group size because I was hoping to have, one of their rigs and my rig to make groups of 4. I can only take 2 people, one in the basket and one behind me.
But I'm glad you brought that up because I did want to ask about the motorcycle and maybe even jumping back. Why motorcycle?
Sorry, I got ahead of myself.
No. But I mean, presumably you already rode motorcycles. You were already interested in motorcycles. It wasn't like motorcycle tours would be really cool. Let me learn how to go ride a motorcycle and get a license. So clearly this is already there. Is that why was it for the gimmick of it? Was that you really feel there's this unique value in experiencing Paris by motorcycle? And I would imagine too, as someone who's never ridden a sidecar, that's its own experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of where did that come about? And at what stage? Was it always there?
It's a 10-year long story, I guess. I'll make it quick. So after 3 years of being a tour guide with Fat Tire Tours, I had left briefly and wanted to start my own tour business after just 3 years of being a tour guide. My dad is the one who suggested you should do motorcycle tours because he had a buddy who was just renting bikes. I thought, Dad, that's crazy. I don't even have a motorcycle license. And my dad was so encouraging. He was like, listen, I'll pay for the license. Just do it. Just try this out. So, I went and I lived with my parents for 2 months and just full-time job was getting this motorcycle license. So I got it, used my savings to buy my first bike and was acquainted with this guy who was just renting, didn't speak any English, didn't know anything about tourism. He just liked to rent motorcycles and started getting a little bit of traction. And then that's when Fat Tire called me and offered me a management job. And, so I was perplexed and called my dad and he was like, old company wants you back. That's a good position to be in. Don't worry about it. Just go back if you want. So I did the motorcycle tour guide thing kind of as a hobby for several years while working full-time as the HR manager for Fat Tire.
And were you just sort of where were you getting customers? Were you just...
Oh, like word of mouth, Facebook, stuff like that. The guy renting bikes, every time he had a customer who rented a bike and wanted a tour guide, he would call me, stuff like that. So it was a handful of tours per season, all under the table. I mean, it was, I didn't have a website or anything. It was really just a hobby.
But there was an interest for it then, even at that point, which is interesting.
Yes, there was. The majority of exists motorcycle tour companies, but most of them are multi-day, multi-week excursions. The day tour didn't really exist until 2015 when my competitors opened Retro Tour, and they do sidecar tours, focusing more so on greater volume, shorter tours. Their rigs are different. But when I saw that I was potentially going to lose my job because of COVID, that's when this idea came back to me once again. I thought, well, I was applying to a bunch of HR positions, but if I'm not doing HR for tourism, I don't want to do it. Tour, it's fun in tourism. It's not fun in a French company. So the motorcycle tourism thing came back because I had always liked bikes ever since I first parked my butt on a motorcycle. After my dad pushed me to do it, I was like, holy moly, why haven't I been doing this for longer? It was so much fun. So I just decided, well, I love tourism. I love motorcycles. Let me see how I can put them together. And the idea about the sidecar came about because I wanted to open up the potential for guests that don't necessarily have a motorcycle license, right? If I'm taking people behind me on their own bikes, they all have to have a license and a valid, long enough license to be able to rent a bike in France. It was very, very niche. And I wanted to be able to just open it up to anybody, regardless of whether they have a license or not, and hence the sidecar.
Are sidecars a thing?
They're experiencing a resurgence. That's another contributing factor to the delay from the manufacturer in the UK. It's like this, I don't know, like there's just more and more hipsters out there that just love all things retro, and sidecars are pretty retro, So on top of it, in a city, they're still small enough. They turn on a dime. They're not nearly as cumbersome as a car. So, and for passengers, well, first of all, for the driver, they're oodles of fun to ride. They're really weird and particular. You get used to it in 30 minutes, and then it's just tons of fun. And the fact that you can take two people with you and share the experience makes it all the more exciting for the chauffeur, for the pilot or driver, rider, whatever you want to call them. Riding in the basket is so incredibly weird and fun, because if the driver's goofy enough, he'll do a little thing with the handlebars and lift the basket off the ground. That's tons of fun. But the biggest draw to riding on the back of a motorcycle or in the sidecar is that you have everything. You're fully exposed to everything. There's no window filtering what you're seeing and yourself, between what you're seeing and yourself. And you can get that from riding a bicycle as well, or independently riding a motorcycle, but then you have to concentrate on the actual piece of equipment you're manipulating. If you're on the back of a motorcycle or in the sidecar, you're free to take in the sights without any concern about manipulating a piece of equipment and making sure you don't crash into whoever's in front of you, or watch out for people coming at you from sides. I mean, Paris is a busy city, so it's quite particular in that you get a little bit of the positive in terms of exposure of riding a bicycle, but the positive of being a passenger in a car or something, minus that filter.
That's really interesting, actually, as you're saying this, because my first thought too is that Paris is such a walking city, right? Like, part of the fun of Paris is walking around, wandering through the lanes. But hearing you talk about this, it makes me think of New York City, where I'm from. And it's the same, right? New York City is a walking city. That being said, because we walk everywhere here, locals anyway, when you are in a car, besides, driving, forget it. It's a very stressful and unpleasant experience. But being a passenger in a car, as someone personally who doesn't take taxis everywhere, it is a really unique experience. You get to it's a very voyeuristic experience. You could really stare out the window. You could look at people. You could look up at buildings. And it's very, very different from walking. So I am now sort of picturing Paris, on the back of a bike. I can't picture myself in a sidecar at the moment, but at the back of the bike, looking around. How cool to have the best of both worlds, as you say. Like, you're on the bike, you're out, you're in the city because there's not that barrier that a car would have, but you're not in charge of anything. So it's still very passive. Yeah.
And because you're covering more distance with greater speed, right? I mean, walking is fantastic. I walk all over the place, and you can really pick up a lot of the details of wherever you are when you're walking. But the quicker you move through the city, it's like your vision kind of just ends up being drawn out, and you get a more general, like smell of the city, a more general feel of it, because you're now assimilating so much more sensory input over a smaller period of time. So you get this, I don't know how to describe it properly, but like there's a flow to the city. A fluidity and a rhythm that you get when you try to move through it quickly that maybe you don't as much when you're walking.
That's really cool. That's really, really cool. Yeah, it does. And now that we're on, I promise all listeners I'll get to logistic stuff, which I know everyone loves. But now that we're talking about experience still, I'm very curious. A driver guide, quote unquote, is a very specific image, right? In the travel industry, you picture, the guide who's doing a multi-day overland trip, and they're driving the little bus and they're talking, or you're picturing in a city, like DC, where they're sort of talking out the cart and pointing at things. Theoretically, this will be led by driver guides, but how does that look like to you? How is it going to be set up? How is the information going to be attached to the bike and the experience? Can you walk me through that a little bit?
Does that, did you ask me if that freaks me out a little bit?
No. Can you walk me through it a little bit?
Yeah. Yes, with pleasure. So, So yes, the driver guide, immediately you get that image of, bus driver, tour guide type person with, 20 people that they're catering to. Remember, there's going to be one driver per 2 guests. So the ratio is so tiny that it's more so, it evokes, in my mind anyways, it evokes the image of I don't want to use the term aristocratic, but think of Downton Abbey. You remember the Irish driver in Downton Abbey?
Yes.
They cater to very few individuals, but they make sure all needs are met. And, they know each other very well. There's a trust built. And there's no room for the guest anyways to be lost amongst the crowd. So it's more so a very private chauffeur guiding experience. It's like a micro private tour because of the nature of the machine. On top of it, the person behind me, they're right there. I don't know if you follow my Instagram account. It's linked to my website, so you should be able to see a lot of the pictures there. But when I do bring some people on for promotional reasons, you can see their faces are right here. The person in the basket is right there. It's a close quarters experience, and so building out a story over the course of a tour with 2 people that are in such proximity is actually very easy. It's like hanging out with a couple good friends. And the helmets, I haven't decided yet whether to go the Bluetooth route or not. Because the few tests that I've done with people, as long as we're not moving at speed, they can hear me just fine without Bluetooth. And it's an expensive add-on, considering startup costs. I may omit Bluetooth for now and eventually later, but stopped in traffic or stopped in front of monuments, discussion is very, very easy.
Okay, so there doesn't necessarily need to be this break between driving and content.
No, not too much. If I'm navigating some heavy traffic that's moving along, then that's a good opportunity also for them to take some pictures and not listen to me, blah blah blah. No matter how good the tour guide is, sometimes it's nice to have a break and let your ears rest a little bit. So
I strongly agree with that.
Right. So there will be natural breaks, and it will depend on the guests as well. If they're total chatterboxes, then yes, I can easily discuss while piloting the rig. If they're very quiet and they prefer having a more serene experience, then it's totally fine as well. The nicest thing about, when I was a tour guide with Fat Tire, I loved small groups because you can get into discussion more. You can cater to them a little bit more, make adjustments. During the wintertime, if I had only 2 people, I would just ask them, where do you guys want to go? I often broke from the standard route. We never had scripts, thankfully, but we did have standard routes, and I loved breaking out of them and just, catering to the whims of my guests.
So this is it's a private tour experience, just by the nature of the limitation of the group size.
Mm-hmm.
And I have so many questions. Okay, one more on the bike. Will there be any stopping in the tour?
Yes.
People get off the bike okay, so that is built into it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's correct. The duration of the tours, especially compared to my competitors, they're a bit longer. I do want to, bring storytelling and appropriate historical content and anecdotes to the tour because, I was a tour guide for 3 years and a trained history teacher. I like that stuff and I find it interesting, and it's like the special sauce of the city. It brings it to life. And on top of it, it makes for cool picture opportunities and opportunity to swap seats as well, because the experience in the sidecar is a little different to the back of the bike. So, spending the whole tour sitting in the sidecar, you may want to, may start shifting your seat. So for the sake of comfort, for the sake of variety, and for the sake of conviviality, yes, stops are most definitely part of the tours.
And how long are the tours?
So I have 3 standard tours that I've created. One, the shortest one is 2 hours long. That's like the, iconic monuments tour, Eiffel Tower to the Louvre and Arc de Triomphe and that stuff, kind of like the postcard tour. My real passion project is the middle ground tour. It's 3.5 hours long. I call it Vice and Violence because that's the unifying thread in the routes. We do Latin Quarter through the Marais up to Montmartre. So it's not a loop, that one. But because it's a private tour, I can then do hotel drop-off when we're done at the top of Montmartre. And so I use that theme of vice and violence to connect the histories of the Latin Quarter and the Marais and Montmartre, because they have distinct histories, those neighborhoods. But one of the big unifying threads is both vice and violence. So, we talk about sieges and riots and revolution, the history of prostitution in Paris, alcohol abuse. I mean, it all kind of comes together in a really weird package. Drinks are included on that tour. Either stop at a cafe or, when the weather's nice, then I'll be bringing some wine with me to open for our guests, or for my guests, I should say. And then the longest tour that I have regularly scheduled is Versailles. That's a full day. So departing from Paris, it's about a half-hour drive to the chateau, and I get passport tickets that give us a timed entry for the chateau. And we also are able to then go into the big Trianon, the small Trianon, the Queen's Hamlet. We also stop at the market for lunch. It was a very popular bicycle tour with Fat Tire, and I had done it a bunch of times. And I mean, it's very doable by sidecar as well. The only way to get out to Versailles and experience it is by RER, by public transport, or hiring a car or taking a bus. Getting out there by sidecar on surface roads through some of the woods that extend between Paris and Versailles is kind of fun.
Wow. Oh, yeah. It makes the transport part of the experience then.
Yes, exactly. And then navigating between the chateau and the Trianons and the market where we get our lunch, or the restaurant in case of inclement weather, is all taken care of by sidecar. That's also an all-inclusive tour. So it's relatively expensive, and I don't want guests having to pull their wallet out after having paid for the tour. So the lunch is included in the tour, or the tickets are all included in the tour. It's a full package.
That sounds so lovely. My other big question that keeps floating around, how many guides are sort of qualified for this type of tour? I mean, you're looking specifically for guides who have motorcycle licenses, or are you finding people in the motorcycle world? I mean, in Paris, it is licensed, correct? So there's quite a process to become a tour guide.
It depends on what kind of tour guiding you're doing.
Okay.
So if you want to speak inside specific monuments, like the chateau at Versailles, the Louvre, you need something called la droit de parole, the right to speak. And that is accorded with a conference guide license, which you can either obtain through a 2-year program or through equivalency. If you have been tour guiding out and about, like exterior tour guides or the Eiffel Tower, you don't need the droit de parole to work in the Eiffel Tower as a tour guide or to give tours in the Eiffel Tower. And bicycle tour guiding doesn't require any kind of license. So that's one of the things I want to tick off my box, so that when we go into the Versailles Chateau, rather than everyone have an audio guide, I could then take over some of the speaking myself.
You hear a lot about Arrival on this podcast. It's the conference designed for tourpreneurs just like you. The Arrival conference features so many practical sessions to help operators with direct bookings, digital marketing, tour and experience design, business operations, and so much more. You'll also get to connect with great people from OTAs, technology companies, marketing experts, and get inspired to grow your business in the year ahead. What we love most about Arrival is seeing operators and tourpreneurs, large and small, meeting each other and building new friendships and partnerships, seeing them share their stories and their learnings. This is what makes Arrival so special. So why not join Shane and many other tourpreneurs in Las Vegas, October 10 to 13 at Arrival, the event where operators, attractions, and experience creators learn, connect, and grow. Find out more at www.arrival.travel.
So you will need, if you're doing, let's say, the 4 guests, right, and the 2 motorcycles, you would serve as the guide for all 4. You wouldn't have to worry about a second.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's correct. I would be the tour, because finding someone with a French motorcycle license, but who also speaks English fluently, is a little tricky. So, but besides, there's no need at this point to find that type of person. I just need someone with a motorcycle license who will be following me and acting just as an extra chauffeur. Furthermore, there is another type of license required. It's called the Carte Professionnelle VMDTR. I just got it in the mail a few days ago. And that legally allows me to transport people for profit. So as long as people are paying me and my company for it, and I am the holder, it's all kosher. Nobody is paying the other driver. So they won't need that. They won't need that. The other driver is it's going to be an invoice agreement between me and the other driver. So the client revenue is going towards me and the company, and then the driver just invoices me for services rendered.
Okay, so what happens if you get sick?
Well, thankfully I don't get sick very often. What is the future plan? I guess I should ask. Let's say the bookings are like crazy, and you have tons of bookings, and you now even have multiple at the same time. Just for scale. In that case, then yes, I need to find other people that have the VMDTR card. I'm lucky in that there's a bit of a training process, and then a written exam and a practical exam to get this professional chauffeur card for motorcycles and sidecars. The guy who trained me, he represents the Ministry of Transport with something else called the Chambre des Métiers et de l'Artisanat. So I'm not going to bore you with the machinations and how the French structure is built, but he knows all of the motorcycle taxi drivers in Paris because he trains almost everybody. And he's already told me, if you start looking for other drivers, if you need a licensed driver, you ask me first, and then he's going to give me I'll have access to essentially a resume library, and then I can pour through and start interviewing people.
Because especially if you don't need someone who has the license to guide inside of a building, you can train guides, presumably, because that was part of your career as well. Mm-hmm. So that'll be the easier, probably, part to supplement. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That'll be fun to do again. Oh yeah. Finding a guide to the speech aspect of the guiding, the actual kind of tour guide role, I'm not concerned with very much at all. But if someone else has to lead a group and be a holder of this card, I mean, I was the only one that was starting a tourism business. Everybody else was doing this to be a motorcycle taxi driver. And do like airport pickup and stuff. So they're all very local, and few speak English. So that is going to be one of my biggest challenges, most definitely. If I get sick, because of how regulated this activity is, I have to have a very specific insurance policy, and it would be terrible to cancel on my guests. But the insurance policy is so robust that they maintain my salary while I'm sick.
Wow. As you know, someone from the US, this is very hard for me to understand. So you can basically get a paid sick day.
Yes.
Because of the chauffeur license.
Yes, exactly. If I didn't have this chauffeur card, I could not get that insurance, which is specific to motorcycle taxi driving, motorcycle chauffeuring. And I wouldn't be able to benefit from that type of insurance. It's expensive, but it's very robust. And
does it cover you for weather as well? Because again, walking tour can run in the rain. Not ideal, but it can. Could your tours run in the rain?
Oh yeah, okay. For sure. I act already as a first windscreen to the person behind me, and the sidecar has a little bit of a windscreen in front of it. So as we move, I've done it before. I don't know if you know Oliver G from the Earful Tower podcast. I helped him with the delivery of some books that he had written, and we went out. I mean, it was pouring rain, and we used the sidecar, and he was barely wet. So it's not so bad in the rain. Plus, I would provide rain gear, rain pants and a rain jacket over the guests' clothes.
Okay.
So yeah, I wouldn't cancel a tour just because it's raining. I would cancel a tour if the roads are freezing. If it's it still has 3 wheels, so a slide is not detrimental to the tour. It'll be a little hair raising. Depends on how adventurous the guests are.
Right, could be a plus.
Yeah.
Our friend Chris Torres over at the Tourism Marketing Agency has just launched a series of 5-minute workshops designed to help you make small changes but make big, positive impacts in your tour business. Chris will cover such topics as email marketing, video creation, sales processes, review building, and much, much more. This free 10-week series will be available on his Digital Tourism Show Facebook group, YouTube channel, and all good podcasts. Just search the Digital Tourism Show for details.
I'm curious how it works in terms of your pricing, because you are limited by how many people you can take. You have these costs year round between insurance and the licenses and the startup costs and the maintenance. And presumably you have to put the motorcycles and sidecars somewhere. I'm assuming that evens out because you've gone this far and you're continuing to go further. But is that something that it's a very heavy startup cost, and then sort of how well you need to do this season or next season to balance it out?
So, most listeners are American, correct?
It's pretty split. European, American, Australian, I believe, are the biggest buckets.
All right. Well, there's some finer aspects of French labor law, because I had spent so long with the previous employer as a manager. My severance and my unemployment means I don't have to concern myself with paying my own salary for 2 years, which is awesome. A chunk of that also went into financing the first sidecar. The total startup costs with the sidecar, the garage space, the insurance for the first year was just under 40,000 euros. That's just with one rig.
Right.
There are legal fees to get it set up. But that's why I used a sizable chunk of my severance. I started a crowdfunding campaign as well, some of my own savings. My grandparents grew up with sidecars, and so they also pitched in to help with the startup costs.
Wow.
So that was very cool. There were sidecars on both sides of my family. But my living grandmother, her father rode a BSA 500 with a British sidecar, and she has fond memories of that. So yeah, when she learned that I was doing this, she pitched in a little bit of extra change as well. And there were other cost cutting measures that I took as well. One of my cousins is a web developer, so my website, relatively speaking, cost peanuts. And the dealership that I approached them because they put on their website these sidecars for sale. So I, played played dumb and asked if I could, test one out or, come meet you guys and see what the rig looks like in person. And after hanging out with the director of sales for the sidecars and going for a spin and everything, I let him know that I was considering starting a sidecar tour business. And his mind just was blown. He was like, that is the greatest idea I've ever heard, because he wants to build the sales of these rigs. So if I have a couple of them and I'm running around town and nobody else has these types of sidecars, this one dealership has the monopoly on them for the time being. So he immediately saw the potential in me using his sidecars. So I kind of negotiated with them that maintenance costs would be on them. So I'm paying full price for the rig, but they are going to cover all maintenance costs year round.
Wow.
Told you they were awesome.
Yeah. Well, and to give you credit, to say that you're a guy with a plan is an understatement. This is obviously very well thought out all the way through. And it makes me think of last season with She Shapes History, who we spoke with. They had very, very niche tours, very, very niche topic. And it was interesting in that they actually were able to get a lot more resources because of that niche, because people were excited when they came in. They were excited about the idea. They wanted to be a part of it. They saw it as a very positive thing. I think when you're doing, just another walking tour, that it's much harder to get access to these resources and deals. But when you have something that is very unique, yes, it's a niche and there's going to be more of a niche market. But I think that's a huge trade-off, is that working with people, getting promotions, getting partnerships, is going to be a lot more easier if it's something that's new and exciting.
The responses I get, the replies and reactions that I get from people in the industry and people I talk to about this are all overwhelmingly positive. And I have a friend who's a photographer, Lindsay Kent at Pic Tours Paris. She's the one who snapped I don't know if you saw on the website, there's a picture of me flying the basket across the Alexander III Bridge.
That sticks out.
She snapped that picture for me. That picture has ended up in French motorcycle magazines. And it's gotten so much positive, so many positive reactions. Just like, that's the coolest picture I've ever seen. So yeah, the nicheness and the quirkiness of the sidecar definitely makes it easy to pitch, because it's not, like you said, just another walking tour. The barrier to entry is also incredibly high because of the requirement of these different licenses and understanding local compliance to be able to do this. There's only been one competitor on the market since 2015. And I actually met with them last week. Sorry, I'm going off on a mini tangent.
No, that's really interesting.
You were talking about prices earlier. They admitted to me that they had to hike their prices as well. Not as well. I haven't hiked my prices. I made them and they're stationary for now, but they have brought their prices up closer to mine. My tours were priced higher than theirs. I mean, they have multiple sidecars. There are 3 people working together and then a bunch of freelancer drivers. So they can do volume and not require their tours to be profitable as from the first person. But because of everything that's happened during COVID, they also had to increase their prices. Insurance is going up, and so they're closer to me now, but I'm still priced higher. But I bring more value, in my opinion. I speak English, first of all, and I'm a trained tour guide.
That's I love to hear when tour operators are talking to each other, because I think even as direct competitors, there's, especially if you're the 2 sole sidecar tour operators in Paris, it's sort of nice to have someone in the same boat, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. I was pretty nervous going into that meeting because I had been following them for quite some time. But they're nice guys. They were easy to talk to, and they had a very open mentality, a more collaborative mindset, rather than putting barriers up and saying, "Oh, what does this guy think he's doing, treading on our turf?" No, they were very welcoming.
That's great.
Which was very cool. That must mean they're taking me seriously.
Yeah. Also, so I I feel like we could obviously go into logistics and I have a whole list of questions that I promise I'll get to next episode of, the website and the booking software and all of that fun stuff that is super, super relevant. But just in the interest of time, I guess I'm curious. I just kind of want to know where you're at right now so that when we check in with you again, we have some sense of time. So when are you planning on opening? Your site is live, tours are bookable. When
as of the 1st of March, my tours are open.
Okay, so someone could book for March 1st.
Yes, yeah, they could, and then I'd be using the dealership's demo rig to give that tour. I think I had mentioned right that with the delay from the British manufacturer for the sidecar, they were like, use our rig, it'll be totally fine.
And so 2 weeks from now, do you have any bookings?
I do not yet. Somebody who contributed to my crowdfunding campaign, they have a Versailles tour as a reward, so that's booked for the 21st of May. And then we'll probably get into this in more detail, but I'm building partnerships with other travel agents and stuff. So there are many inquiries going on right now. But because it's COVID, and also I'm a very new operator on the market. Lots of questions, lots of curiosity, but I'm not expecting really any serious bookings for another month or so.
Are you going to be doing many test tours?
I've already done several test tours. What I really want to focus on now is offering free tours to people who are in the industry or have parallel businesses where it would be mutually beneficial to collaborate. I met earlier this morning with Jane Birch from La Cuisine Paris. And she would love to come into and take a tour with me. So I'm using those promotional opportunities to continue to do dry runs of my tour routes.
No, that's great.
I just done that on Saturday. Did the Vice and Violence A to Z. Timing was great. Route was great. So that tour, in my mind, is done and dusted. There's no more adjustment needs to be done to that. Same deal with Versailles. I've done that. I'd like to do it another 1 or 2 times. And the Monuments tour, I'll need to run through that another 1 or 2 times to really feel happy with it. Just sanding out the little burrs and nicks and stuff.
Yeah, but how great that you're at this point. I talked to quite a few operators who are, opening in 2 weeks or already have bookings on the calendar, and they don't feel quite as confident that they're at the stage of polishing. So I think you're in a great place, it sounds like.
Thanks. I had the time to do it,
No, the setup's great. The setup's great. Okay. So if I could only ask one more question, and I haven't necessarily been saving this to the end, but this is kind of a nice wrap up. Could you explain the name of your tour company,
Excellent.
Where it comes from?
I was hoping you were going to ask that because I often forget to specify where it comes from. Chango is how it's pronounced, or chongo in French, or chango in Spanish. It's a Basque word. Are you familiar with the Basque region?
Yes. Well, because it has the same starting as Chach. And I know that very well from
TXOTX.
So, yeah. Right?
Yeah. Chach.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Chango means excursion, simply put. There's a few other meanings. It could mean leisurely outing or, travel by unconventional means. But the most broadly accepted translation is excursion. And I got married in the Basque region. I got my motorcycle license in the Basque region. One of my brothers was born there. So,
to clarify, just realizing to be nice to everyone, the Basque region is sort of this cultural region that spans across France and Spain.
Yes,
and
southwestern
has
France
language.
And northeastern Spain on the Atlantic coast, like in the Bay of Biscay. It overlaps the Pyrenees Mountains. It's really interesting. We could go off on a tangent about the Basque country for ages. It's older than the Roman Empire. It's been around for ages.
And so you have this connection, all of these small connections, I should say, to this region.
Mm-hmm. And originally that's where I wanted to do this. because I knew that there was already, someone doing it in Paris. And so I thought, well, my wife and kids and I, we all spent all of the confinements, all the quarantines, we did them down there because my parents live there too. So, there's more space. We didn't want to be stuck in a Parisian apartment during quarantine. So we would go down and spend the quarantines with family. And every time we went back up to Paris, I mean, the weather's better down there. The people are nicer. The food is better. The scenery is better. There's mountains and ocean. It's awesome. And we even visited houses. We were considering moving. So originally I was planning on starting sidecar tours in the Basque region. But then, talking to my wife, she is the voice of reason. I have more of a professional network in Paris, and which, is impossible to argue with. I mean, my whole tourism career was based out of Paris. The season is longer in Paris. Travel is going to return faster in Paris than anywhere else in France. And our kids are very happy in their current school. So, why uproot them? And so, thought about it a bit and decided to do it up here.
And so you just brought a little bit of Basque into the tour, just through the name.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to adjust the name to make it more Parisian, but speaking to my graphic designer friend, she was like, when she heard the original name, she's like, oh man, that Chango is so much cooler. She's like, nobody's going to know how to pronounce it. Nobody's going to know what it means, but that's kind of the charm. So I decided to stick with it.
Love it. As good as reason as any, right?
Yeah.
This was so great. I'm so excited about these tours. As I said, from
thanks,
first
Nikki.
seeing you in the leather jacket and the motorcycle, now hearing more about it. I mean, it really sounds, I'll be very honest. I thought, a very gimmicky tour. You could probably go around on the motorcycle and not have to talk much content, but it's so fantastic that you do come from this content strong, storytelling strong background, and to combine it with this really interesting way to experience a city. It just sounds fantastic. So I'm very, very excited to keep checking in with you throughout the season. And I mean, I wish you the best of luck in all the bookings coming up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I so appreciate it.
Well, and so we'll check back in if you're willing to chat again.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I can't wait. This is a ton of fun.
Amazing.
It's nice to also just talk about it out loud to another industry professional, Sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy at home by myself trying to work on this.
I know the feeling.
Thanks for listening to the Tourpreneur podcast. Be sure to visit tourpreneur.com to join the conversation and access the show notes, including links to the resources mentioned on today's episode. This is Tourpreneur.